Martina, how would you introduce yourself to someone if they asked, what do you do?
I usually just say I'm a DJ because that's exactly what I do for money. But for the most part, I say I'm an artist because an artist can mean different things, which I am. I sing, songwrite, everything. But I usually just say I'm a DJ.
And you also do singing, songwriting. You dabbled in fashion, style, and art. How do all of those coexist for you? Because I know DJing is like your main gig, but it does tie into your singing and songwriting as well, right?
Yeah. I think like all of them just kind of, the way they happened, they all sort of, I expressed myself the same way through all of those arts. Like styling, when I was doing styling years ago, I wanted to become a fashion stylist, and that was like my goal. And then I realized that music was a stronger passion for me, but with styling, it was like, I'm layering clothes, or like I'm expressing myself through clothes, and then that came into expressing myself through curating music, and then through that with like raps and songwriting. So they all kind of like are the same form of expression to me in a way. I don't know.
It all works.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start from the top. You were born in Serbia, you were raised in Vancouver, and you moved to Toronto to pursue something bigger.
Yes.
So can you take me back to your first moments in the city and what that felt like for you?
In Toronto? Yeah, it was June 2015. My friends already moved here a few months before, and then I had my sister living here who also moved from Vancouver a few months before, so I had a few people I knew. But I came from living in New York for like 10 months, so I was like trying to make it in New York before that, and it just didn't happen. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna try Toronto. It's basically the New York of Canada. And then I came here, and it was like, I felt like Toronto was really buzzing then. It was like Drake's, what was it? If you're reading it, it's too late. And then the Drake and Meek Mill song, like Rico or whatever. Rico, you know, like the, when they were friends, not before the diss tracks.
Okay.
I think it was the summer of the diss track. But anyways, Toronto was just like fire. Like it was just everywhere I went, I was like, oh my God, like I have a chance to like flourish here because there's room for growth. Like, and everyone was kind of down to like where are you from? Whereas in like Vancouver, I felt like it was stale for me. I couldn't really grow. I hit like some sort of ceiling. So yeah, I don't know. I just started like networking and like working a bit and serving for like a couple of months. And then after a couple of months of serving, like waitressing, I cut that off and I was like, I'm gonna DJ full time because I had enough sort of started. And since October 2015, I've just been DJing as a source of income, like nothing else. I never went backwards into like retail or anything, because I was like, not even ego, I was just like, no, I'm putting my foot down and I'm gonna struggle until I can like make a full-on living off of what I like to do.
Was there a moment where you felt like you were so close to maybe going back to a retail job or going back to a serving job, but you forced yourself to just...
Oh yeah, like I even applied to like, I don't know, random jobs like bakeries. I was like, I'm just gonna work in a bakery like 3 days a week for extra income. Because it's just like I guess like my humble, like I don't care about working in a coffee shop or whatever, but I guess I wanted those extra days of where I wasn't working and wasn't making money when I should have been making money like every day. I think I took those days to like plot out my plans, and like I had like charts in my room, and I was like, Gimmemar, what is Gimmemar? What does she want to do? Where does she want to go? Who does she want to be? Da 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 da. And it was like, yeah, I wasn't really making money and I wasn't doing much, but I took that time to like research. I just had this like spongy sort of like brain at the time, and I was like listening to podcasts, everything, and it kind of created my Gimmemar-ness in those down, broke times. And I thought I was kind of like daydreaming too much, but I think those times really gave me the confidence like to know who I am now. I don't know.
I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. Like a lot of people have been in that situation where they kind of just have to not take a certain exit to force themselves to go to a certain destination. But speaking of Gimme and like mapping out that aspect of your life, you have Gimmemar, you have Gimme Links, you have Gimme Film. Like you have stretched out the Gimme, but where did the Gimme come from?
It came just like a few, or maybe like, when I was in fashion school and stuff, I had a blog. It was called 604mommy.wordpress.com.
Still have
I didn't buy a domain. And like I was just blogging about whatever fashion, and like I'd like post like every time there was like a fashion week, I would like pick out my favorites and be like, da-da-da. I was really like, I watched all the videos of all the fashion weeks. I was obsessed. And at the time, I think this is where it sort of clicked together. But at the time, Britney Spears' "Gimme More" was out. Give me more. And I think somewhere in there I clicked that I was like, okay, I was kind of just like writing down words. And then I was like, oh my God, give me more. That's
it's the
my
same
story.
way SOMWABA was created. It was a doodle.
It was really
It
just
was a
like
doodle, now it's a thing.
Yeah, I kind of was just like writing in, I don't know. And obviously Instagram wasn't a thing then, so my brain wasn't fried at the time. Now I feel like I don't think about these things anymore. Like in that time frame, I think it was like 2010 or 2009, I was like always just in downtimes, like I wasn't scrolling. I was like drawing or like, I don't know, even making a video on my MacBook, like of me singing or rapping or something, just because like I needed to put out some fuel.
Speaking of singing, so I know DJ's your main thing, but you did release a debut EP and you released songs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember you once said that DJing made you better understand the kind of music you wanted to make. I remember that's something you previously said.
Yeah.
So can you just tell me why, how and what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think before I started officially like sort of playing around with DJing in like 2010 or something. That was like when I sort of got equipment and started like practicing. But before that, I was just writing raps and like listening to music, whether it was like old school hip hop or whatever. But when I started DJing, I think more recently in the past couple of years where I've been doing it more frequently, I just noticed like BPMs and like melodies, and they kind of like, because I'm DJing so often, I understand like the flow of how certain music is layered together, whether it's different genres going with like each other or same genres or different cities having different sounds. And I think I just started to pay attention to that. And then I would like, when I was making music, I would be with a producer, I'm like, no, this BPM isn't good because I want to mix this song with Faith Evans or whatever, you know, and like I had an idea of like who I wanted, not to sound like, but you know what I mean, who I wanted to be layered with.
How would you describe your sound when it comes to music?
I always say, like if I'm specifically saying genres, I would say like a mishmash of R&B, alternative, electronic with elements of hip hop. Like it's not, I don't like to label it, but if I was going to, it would be kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay, so this is gonna take, bear with me, this question here, because it's a little bit of an explanation. But I watched an interview recently with Jamie Foxx, and he was reflecting on his role of starring as Ray Charles in a film.
Yeah.
And he said that when he would watch interviews of Ray Charles and study him to act as him, he noticed that when he spoke about his music, he was so clear, forward, and knew what he was talking about. Yeah. But the second he spoke about anything else, he started to stutter, because he was just really nervous.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious that music made him feel really in control. So I'm curious if for you, do you feel like you're in control when you're doing music?
Don't know if I feel fully in control with my music, because there's skills that I would like to have that I don't have, that I have to rely on other people to execute my ideas, like production, and like I don't play an instrument, or like I just have my voice, my melodies, and I can sort of execute like delegate my ideas to somebody else. So I would say like maybe not. I think I'm still not as confident in myself as a musician or like a singer.
What about a DJ?
DJ, yes, because
I
know what I'm doing, and I'm confident in like setting up and reading a crowd and everything. There's obviously times where I feel like I know there are 10,000 times better DJs than me. But my goal isn't to be like a turntablist or like a touring crazy big DJ. I've never had that in my head. It's because I saw myself as this other thing, you know, like this other sort of package, which is still being developed. But yeah, I guess like when I do talk about music, and I think it's more just me as an artist, not my music. I wouldn't say like I'm super in control of it.
Is that okay with you? Like, do you want to become in control, or is it something?
Eventually, I want to become more confident in it, where I'm not like, oh, I'm a singer too. You know,
I'm a singer.
I'm a singer, motherfucker. You know what I mean?
She's a singer.
Yeah. I sing.
So in terms of, I think that since I've met you,
yeah,
you've accomplished a lot, whether it comes to collaborations you've done, gigs you've gotten. Do you feel, maybe this is something I feel like a lot of women can also put on themselves, but do you feel any pressure or constraints about having to accomplish any more milestones in a certain amount of time?
Yeah,
How do you deal with that?
the whole word of like surrender is a huge thing for me right now. Is just surrendering control of things and trusting how things will flow and just not rushing, because I think I've spent so much time rushing. I was like, I always, even with my EP release, like that 2017 year, I was like, I started it in maybe December 2016 or January 2017, and I released it in December 2017. But I still feel so cringy about that music. And I feel like if I took my time with it a bit more, I would have been able to polish it enough for me to like listen to it now and be like, oh, I really, really like this. But because I sort of rushed it a bit, it wasn't a huge rush. It was like within a year, I guess that's pretty average for like a 5-track project. But yeah, I'm kind of just in surrendering life and just being like, let it flow. Whatever age I am, it doesn't really matter. Like I just had a birthday and I was like, oh fuck, I thought I was gonna do so much more up until now. But then I look at like other people who I'm inspired by and they've reached their milestones even later than my age now, or whatever, or maybe like a younger person had a different upbringing and that's why they've done many things by 16. And I'm like, oh my God, how are they so smart and intellect? It's like, well, they had different parents and they had a different location. They maybe, who knows, they absorb things differently. I had my own whatever. So
I mean, timing I feel like is something that is so important, and I feel like we've previously discussed the importance of timing and how it does work in our favor. Would you say that does work in your favor as well? Like, is this something that you trust in?
Yeah, I trust it now. I think before I didn't. I was just like, why isn't it happening for me? And I would get angry and like jealous, and it was just like not healthy. You know, I was like too hard on myself for not being. And now I think I'm way more at peace with myself because I trust the timing of things, like genuinely. Before I would say like, you know, you would read quotes online and be like, trust the timing and da 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 da, and you like say it. Now I like legit feel it. I'm just like, okay, cool. If it's gonna take a few months, if it's gonna take next year, it is what it is. If it doesn't happen, something else will happen that's actually meant for me. Maybe it's not even music. I mean, I really hope it is, because I still am.
Yeah.
You know? But
speaking of your music then, I mean, looking back on your tape, you may feel certain ways about it, looking back on all your music, but of all the songs that you've released, which one's the most important to you or stands out to you the most, and why?
I think the one that I made last year, which wasn't even on my EP, or are you talking about my EP?
Anything you've released.
I would say like my song Routine, which I made with my friend Vic Northstar, Vic NS, producer of the song. I just really like the lyrics, and I like how my voice sounds in it, and when I mix it with other songs, like that's the one song that I'm proud to play when I'm DJing.
Okay.
That and Pride. Pride, because it's kind of jazzy, which was produced by Lefty on my previous EP. So those are kind of the two songs that I'm like 99%, like there's like 1% of cringe.
Okay.
Whereas the other songs, like they get to a certain part and I'm like, ew.
Why are you cringing though? Like, is it the lyrics that
it's just my voice. It's the voice and maybe just like the quality.
Okay.
You know, when you look at a picture of yourself from like 2 years ago and you're like, what the fuck was I wearing?
I think it's opposite. Sometimes I look at a phone and be like, oh,
sometimes. Yeah, no, sometimes I look at pictures and I'm like, oh my God, I looked so good. How did I? And I know at that time I didn't feel like I looked good. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's a delusional, like, it's just a self-critique thing, I guess.
I'm just jumping off things you're saying here, but I'm going to take it back to DJing now.
Okay.
So you DJ'd in Montreal, you DJ'd in London, you were DJing in there, New York.
Yeah.
Where else? What? Any other cities?
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're not in like a city that's your hometown, do you rely on instant gratification more than when you are in Toronto?
What do you mean, like?
Like, do you rely on the crowd's reaction to your sets when you're not in a city that's home?
Yeah.
Is that something that you even rely on in Toronto?
It depends on the place, because I'm not the type of DJ that does like, I've done different settings, like whether it's like, I haven't been on many like huge stages where I'm like doing an entertainment DJ set where it's like, you know, huge, like it's mostly kind of like clubby bar style where people are sort of dancing or they can just be mingling. But for me, I think I do rely on like people dancing.
Of course, yeah.
And, you know, giving me props so I know that I'm creating a good vibe in the room. But sometimes I have to play music for people that I think that they want to hear and not be selfish with my selections. There's been times where I'm selfish with my selections and I'm like, I'm going to play this like dark stuff because I'm like feeling a type of way that day. And they're like, can you play some whatever? And I'm like, okay. And then I have to cater to them. And then the energy becomes like disconnected because I'm doing something that's like not authentic to me in the moment to please other people.
Would you say that's the downfall of being a DJ overall?
Yeah, well, just because like I make a living off of it, so now I'm at a point where I have to cater to other people to make a paycheck. So it's not about my art anymore, whereas some DJs have been really good at creating a career off of just what they want. You know what I mean? Like choosing their music, their crowds, their locations in the world, and they've sort of been able to create a world for themselves. I might have trapped myself a bit, and I feel a little bit trapped right now where I'm like doing gigs just for the dollar bill, but I actually like don't really care for...
So you don't want to get to the point where you could be, I mean, let's just say like a scratch basket.
Yeah.
Where people come for what you do and no one asks questions. Would you want to get to that point?
I think so. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm, with I'm in a weird place right now with DJing because I feel like I'm a slave to my own like art of it, I guess. Like I'm relying on the money. It's more of like, I'm passionate about it still, but I was definitely way more passionate about it when I didn't have as many gigs. So I was like practicing and making mixes and doing all this stuff. And now I'm just like, I don't even prepare that much for gigs. Like I'm just kind of like, oh, I'll add some few new music in my library or whatever. And I guess because I'm so focused on my music that it's sort of like, it's hard to balance both. I would say that eventually I would like to play shows as a DJ where people are coming for my sound or my niche or whatever.
Tell me a little bit about being a female DJ in Toronto. What is that culture like for you? Is that like a positive thing for you, or is there a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's positive now. It was definitely, when I moved here in 2015, that summer, it was like a fluctuation of female DJs. There was like so many opportunities, and actually there was like kind of a handful of female DJs that I knew in sort of the city, and I was like, oh, there's room for us. And we were kind of like, I think at first it was like supportive, sort of competitive, because we're like, oh my god, like we're all trying to get our space or whatever. And then in the past couple of years, not just females, but like everybody is a DJ. But it's frustrating
I was
because
gonna say, good, bad.
I wouldn't say if it's good or bad, because it's cool that people have access to do things now because of the internet. You can learn how to do things. If you're interested in something, you can find a tutorial. And with DJing, the equipment has become smaller and smaller. So you can buy a controller over like just turntables, which are really expensive. Right. And you can learn the basics of like DJing at a, it's less expensive. But it's unfortunately dumbed down the practice and the dedication to becoming good. So people they get the basics of it, and then they start getting bookings or whatever, or because maybe they're popular on Instagram. So there's this whole world of like popularity and clout now that's like created space for people to do things when they're not ready for them, just because they have like a following or whatever.
This reminds me of this remark I saw from K. Michelle. Yeah. And she was talking about Black China. Yeah. And she went off on this video, and she was like, people think that they can just become a singer nowadays, having not put in years of work. And it's because they think because they're popular on Instagram or they have millions of followers, they can put out a song. And it kind of reminds me of what you're saying. It's like, there's probably a good chunk of people who have practiced DJing like you, put in the time, and then someone just comes up and buys one deck and posts one photo. Yeah. So it's an interesting time we're living in, no doubt.
Well, yeah, it's been frustrating, and like, and with the female aspect, it's like you can be cute, and then people will like kind of like maybe mold you. I think people are becoming their views on like a cute, pretty girl DJing is like now more expected. Like people have seen it already, but in the beginning, like I was playing at like a retail store. I remember in like 2015, 16 when I started my one frequent client, and I was DJing there, and I would always dress up because years ago when I found out, like when I sort of became interested in DJing, I had these like New York it girls like from the magazines that were like DJs, like Harley Vieira Newton, Layla Zark, Hannah Bronfman, like all these girls that were like living this like fashion and music lifestyle. I'm like, oh my God, I need to form those two. So when I started DJing retail things, I was so excited to be able to dress up, look cute, and DJ and show my skills. But people would like be so surprised. Like I remember a man came up to me and was like, are you like just a model like pretending to DJ, or like are you, or I don't know, he was so surprised. He was like, it's like seeing one guy said, it's like seeing a female on a motorcycle. It's just so hot.
What?
And I was like, so I would get these like reactions.
How did you respond to that?
I'm not like, I didn't react. I was just like you're so stupid. Like where are you from?
Yeah.
And so I guess I've had so many things like that. And then sometimes I would like dress down. Like I would dress more tomboy.
Was that for you or for them?
For people to take me seriously. Because as soon as I was like like say I was DJing with like a bunch of guys, I would show up to the place and then like go and plug in my stuff. And if I'm like all sexy, it makes people feel uncomfortable. And then I realized that, and so I would like try and make people feel comfortable by like dressing myself down.
But you're not doing that anymore.
No, of course not, because now I'm more confident in like what I do and whatever. But that's like kind of the whole female aspect of it. There's so many places where we're not equal and people will judge us ahead of time because they are looking at an outside image and they're like, pretty, boobs, ass, this, before anything else, you know?
I feel like Toronto has a lot of female DJs that are popping off right now. So I feel like they're helping change that as well. You among all of them.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I don't find it very competitive. Like I feel like a lot of the female DJs that I know in the Toronto downtown area, we're all pretty supportive of each other. And I have like a few close DJ friends that we pass each other gigs when we can't take one, or like bring us on. Yeah, it's really nice. It's not a hating atmosphere, I would say. Yeah.
Can you tell me about a time where you feel like you exceeded your expectations?
When did I exceed my expectations? I'm so critical of myself, so I feel like I can't think of a positive thing that I've done. Or no, like not positive, but I can't, like, I'm not gonna go dig deep because I really can't think of anything specific, but I would say over and over again, sometimes when I do like double DJ gigs, like doing a morning fitness class and then like an afternoon thing, and then I have to DJ at night from 10 to 2, 3 a.m. And then the next morning I have another like retail thing, like just like the 3-4 days in a row of like nonstop, like I'm DJing for like 20 plus hours or more within like a 24-hour span. I think I'm pretty proud of myself for like continuing to be able to do that. I guess to have the capacity, because in those moments I'm so tired, but I still do a great job and I'm still like nice to people, because even if I'm tired, I'm like, just hold myself.
I've seen you out on those days and you're killing it. So.
Yeah, so I guess those are.
We talked about your DJing, we talked about your music, we talked about you in the city. I just kind of want to wrap up and kind of get a tidbit of information on what's coming up next. Are you working on any new music? Do you have any exciting gigs coming up? I know music is something that's really important to you overall, so I'd love to hear anything that's in the vault.
Yeah, I am just working on music, but it's very slow. And again, it's like me surrendering and being like, all right, accepting that it's slow. There's a lot of like delays and me having to rely on myself and not on other people and just taking charge. So I'm just working on new music. I have a few kind of skeleton tracks. My next project is basically a skeleton without like flesh. So it's kind of like I have the blueprint all laid out, but it just needs skills and like good energy put into it. So I'm kind of just waiting for the right people to come around for me to be able to do that. And then I just am kind of, I wouldn't say I have any crazy shows for DJing coming up because they're just my regular sort of weekly residencies of bars and sort of clubs and restaurants and retail.
I mean, when you touched on earlier how you listened to your first EP and you cringe, what's one thing that you're going to take from that and put into your new music? It's something you're not going to do or you're going to do?
I think I'm just taking my time with like my vocals. Like I think sometimes I would just get I don't know if lazy is the right word, but like I guess lazy with like recording vocals, and then so I kind of want to take my time to get the right sound, or like if I don't like the melody, like sleep on it for 2 weeks, a month even, and just be like, okay, I like where this is going, but I need to change something completely, or even just having the confidence to say this one's not going to work, like it's not it. So yeah, I think that's what I need to do, is just take my time. It's just that feeling. You just have to wait for that feeling where you're like, this feels right.
Yeah.
But I think in art it's kind of hard. Like I think any person who creates something is kind of, even with writing, I'm sure when you're like writing articles, like you're like, oh, I could change
writing,
this, I could change that.
There's literally 1,000 ways that you can write a sentence.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
imagine, with music, there's 1,000 ways you can produce something, but you just have to follow your instinct and just trust.
Yeah.
So finally, in the theme of SOMWABA, SOMWABA is based on cool sounds, interesting thoughts, and all the feels. So I want to know a cool sounds you're listening to, a thought or quote that stands out to you, and the last thing that made you feel a type of way.
I would say I'm like lately, if I was going to say literally recently in the past week or two, I go through phases, obviously when I'm at home, because sometimes DJing a lot, like sometimes I don't listen to music for like 2 days if I have days off, because I just don't want to. I'm like, I need to hear my thoughts. But when I do wind down, it could go from like 70s like funk and disco sometimes to just like dreamy alternative soul of like Tame Impala and like I don't know, just kind of like. But lately I've been listening to a lot of Rick Ross, his latest album. I just like Rick Ross. He makes me feel really powerful because he talks about money and like just power, and it just, I don't know, I like that champagne. I have a Spotify playlist called Champagne Rap, and it's just like Jay-Z, Rick Ross, like Drake from like years ago, just like that kind of like music that you'd think like mobsters would listen to at a table when they're trying to like figure out a deal or something. So yeah, like Rick Ross, and like even just like UK drill. There's this rapper called Heady One. I listened to his album that he just put out like a few weeks ago, probably like 3 times. I don't know what it is about rap that talks about street stuff, but because I've never been that. I think it's just like a fantasy that I like listening to about, and I like listening to somebody taking a struggle and, you know, becoming successful from it. Rick Ross, like so, and he's so poetic, like with his words. So, yeah, I guess like the whole surrender thing. I actually watched an interview a while ago from Brian Eno. He's like a music producer, and he said he was talking about surrender and surrendering control, and how we as artists need to learn to let go for something good to come out of it, and like the truth to come out of it, because we usually try and control how things are supposed to be. But when you surrender, I think that's when like kind of like authentic kind of energy comes out. I guess like recently I watched When They See Us, which is the documentary on the boys that got in New York, like in the 90s or whatever, that got arrested.
The 5?
And wrongfully like accused of murder and rape. And just like that made me think a lot about our system, and even just watching like Top Boy recently, you know, like the struggles and just the social structure and how it's created so much struggle for people, because and it's just I go into a circle of like, how do we stop this? Like, how do we stop all of this like injustice from happening within like poverty and then race? And it's one of those things that I watch and I feel helpless, because I'm like, how am I supposed to do something to make things like this not happen?
Made you feel a type of way?
It made me feel that way.
Okay. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
That was a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here, Martina, aka Gimmemar.